Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Reference Point. I'm your host, Dave Cokerhook. Tonight I'm just going to ask you this question, folks. Are you happy? Okay, that's the question that I want to pursue today. And we're going to pursue that question with the Chief Happiness Officer of the Happy Neighborhood Project, Edwin Edibiri, who is with me on Zoom now from the East Bay in the San Francisco Bay Area. Edwin, welcome to Reference Point.
Thank you so much, David, for having me.
It's a pleasure. So, happiness. This is really, I think, really going to be a fun conversation, but not just fun. I think it's important and relevant. I mean, here we are in the early part of November 2023, and there's all sorts of crazy things going on the planet, right? That are just the opposite of happiness. But let's dive into this a little bit. How do you define happiness?
Well, let's start with this, because I get asked that question all the time. And I tell people, according to the census, right now there's about 8.1 billion people in the world.
Right.
And the definition of happiness can vary that much. Because there is no
8.1
one
billion
size fits
definitions,
all.
yeah.
Okay. And so, yes, I have spent a lot of time on the subject, and I've interviewed enough people, at least over 1,000 people, to say we can try to put a definition to it. And the best I can do will be to say it's a state of mind that is characterized by pleasure, by joy, and a degree of satisfaction.
Okay, cool. And is this a choice that people make, or is it the result of some outside influences?
And I would say both.
Both.
Yeah, because just like you rightfully started this conversation, and you said there are all kind of crazy going on around the world, you have to live in a cave not to be affected by that.
Mm-hmm.
And you cannot even say, oh, well, you know what? I don't have no family in that neck of the woods, so I'm going to mind my own business. Well, it doesn't quite work like that, because we are social beings, and we are connected by energy.
Yes.
So there is outside influence, and then there's internal influence. The internal influence is the struggle we have with ourselves.
Right.
Which is what I call self-inflicted, level of happiness,
Self-inflicted happiness, or the opposite, right?
Or the opposite, exactly, And so both definitely have impact in how we live our life and the level of our well-being.
Got it. Great. Well, I want to ask a little bit about you, because you've got a background, you're an MBA, you've got credentials up the arm, and you've done corporate activities, etc. Tell us a little bit about your background and how you got involved in this particular initiative, which is now your full-time life's work.
Very well. And so I'm not going to go too far back, but I want to say I was born and raised in Nigeria. And at an early age, I was fortunate to take a trip to Europe. I landed in Amsterdam. And as a teenager, to land in Amsterdam, especially the Dam Square of Amsterdam, for those who are familiar with that neck of the wood, was kind of challenging, but I survived it. And I got the opportunity to travel around Europe, not because I have a lot of money, but because I made it a priority. I was like a student that went to school on the side and travel full time, And wherever I got to and I ran out of money, I pause and I look for a job, and I go to a little bit of school, then I continue my travel, So I got to travel quite a bit around Europe before coming to the US. And when I finally got to the US, I decided, you know what? My parents keep asking me what I'm doing. I think it's time to kind of get a little bit serious. Let's see if I can get some kind of degree. And fortunately for me, I landed in a school where the dean of faculty appreciated my level of travel. It was kind of what he wanted to do when he was younger, but he couldn't do it. And so he ended up giving me some credit for my travel, and that kind of accelerated my ability to get my first degree. But in the process, just my childhood dream was to become a pilot.
Oh,
and so I focused on getting my pilot license, which I did in Boston, and then went on to Embry-Riddle Aeronautical University in Daytona Beach, Florida for my MBA. And now, like you said, after that, I tumbled into the corporate world, started a few businesses, sold a few businesses, and then fast forward to 2008, I felt like it was time for me to slow down. Not so much because I didn't have other goals, but the recession then kind of showed me a different picture of life.
Yeah.
And I do a lot of meditation. And so one day out of meditation, I just went out onto the street. I went to my favorite place in the whole world, which is a bookstore.
Okay.
I landed in Barnes and Noble bookstore with the intention of picking a book or two to read, except that as I landed, there was a couple that was having a very intense altercation in the Starbucks that was inside the Barnes and Noble bookstore.
Oh, yes, right.
But I remember finding a table, putting my stuff on it, and I look around the Starbucks, everybody were minding their business. So I told myself, Edwin, you better mind your business also. And the moment I uttered that word, I went into a trance. and I left my stuff on the table. I went to this couple that was screaming at each other. And I said, can I ask you a quick question, if you don't mind? And they look at me like, don't you see what's going on? And the guy, and then they waved to me, okay, go ahead, And at that point, I was a little bit shocked because I didn't even know what to ask them. I didn't know they would stop. I was in a trance. And the first thing that came out of my mouth was, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you guys right now? And you could have heard a pin drop in that Starbucks. And they pause and they look at me, maybe a little bit confused of what to do with me, and they gave me a number. He gave me a number and she gave me a number. And I told them, I said, wow, this number is not really that bad. I said, with a number like this, there must be something you guys are thankful for or happy about. And if you hold on just 1 second, I jumped away, I went to my table and I got a piece of paper from my container. I came back and I said, if you can just write down one thing or two, maybe three, I will be really excited. And so they wrote down 3 things and gave it to me. I look at it and I'm like, wow, they've written the same 3 things in exactly the same order.
Oh, wow.
And when I show it to them, they were also surprised. And I say, guys, I don't know you guys, but based on this, at that time, I think I've been married for like 20 years or 21 years. And I said, if my life depended on it, I cannot write down the same one thing with my wife, not to talk of 3 things in the same order.
Wow.
If you guys don't mind, focus on that, which is what you guys have in common. And folks, when I left Barnes and Noble, I knew that was why I left my home that day. And from that day, I was so excited. Anybody I come across, I'm asking them on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? We got into conversation about happiness. It took me all over the place. So that's a very short story of a very long story.
But which is an amazing story. That's really very interesting. And by any chance, have you stayed connected to that couple?
No.
Okay. So you've taken this initiative and you've used that on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you? You've used that a lot. You were saying earlier that you've had a chance to interview like 1,000 or more people. And
yes.
Have you used that question for them in that type of a framework there?
Exactly. because it was the beginning of every conversation that I have. And I usually, when the people stop enough, to pay me attention, I say, "Can I ask you a quick question about happiness?" And most people are excited because they don't know where I'm coming from.
Yeah.
And then I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you right now? Not yesterday, not tomorrow, just right now.
Right. So how did that activity, the having done that some number of times, lead you to this calling, this process, this project that you are so focused on to deliver this message of happiness around the world? How did that come about?
Well, one other thing happened along the line. And remember now, after that couple, I was just having some fun. Anybody that want to listen, I ask the question, we talk about happiness. And then I started to learn, maybe I can ask some clarifying questions and get to know them more. Mm-hmm. And most time it's like a 3 minutes conversation, maybe 5, 10 at the most. And then one day I was in Jack London Square in Oakland. Mm-hmm. It was a very beautiful Sunday, so I remember it like it was yesterday. A young man was coming towards me, and I jumped in front of him and I said, "Hey, can I ask you a quick question?" And he said, "No." I was like, "Uh-oh." I said, "Come on, it's a really, very short question, And he said, "Not really." So I'm like, what is going on? I think he realized I wasn't going to allow him go that easy. So he said, "Okay, whatever it is, ask me and let me go my way, So I said, on a scale of 1 to 10, how happy are you right now? And he scored by far the lowest. In my head, I'm thinking, wait a second, this is self-assessment, How can somebody score themselves this low in a beautiful place like Jack London Square in Oakland and in a beautiful day like Sunday? And so I said, "Hey, can I share a quick story with you? Because I've got a lot of stories now over time." Uh-huh. So I said, "Can I share a quick story with you?" And he said, "No." I said, "Yeah, we go again, And I said, "Come on, I'll make it really short." And then he said, "Okay, go ahead." So I started sharing the first story that came to my mind. And then at the end, I noticed it slowing down a little bit calmer. So I said, "Hey, can I share one more story with you?" And he did not say yes. He did not say no. So I assume it for a yes. Right. So I shared the second story, then the third, then the fourth, then the fifth. I was on a roll, Uh-huh. Half an hour later, a little voice in my head said, "Okay, Edwin, I think you need to slow down now, And so I reached out to shake his hand, and he held my hand so tight. I was now thinking, okay, what have I got myself into, And he asked for my name. I said, as a general rule, I don't give my name.
Right.
And I made the decision very early on because I don't want people to think, okay, this guy is just being nice, but he's actually going to try to sell us something,
Right, yeah.
I just made in my mind that if our path cross again, that's fine. If it doesn't, it's okay. And so when I explained that, he said, "No, not this time." He said, "I didn't want to talk to you at first. You've kept me here for almost 30 minutes, which it was right. The least you can do is give me your name." And so I thought that was fair. And plus, I wanted to get my hands back, So I gave my name, and he asked for the spelling. I spelled it for him, and he released my hand, and I went my way. Now, for me, it wasn't really a big deal, except that it was a little bit longer than my typical conversation. It wasn't a big deal. Yeah. Until the next day, when I got a call from this young man, and he goes, "Do you remember me from Jack London Square?" I said, "Yes." I said, "But what I don't remember is giving you my number." And he said, "I Google you." I said, "Okay, I got it." I said, "What's up?" He said, "I'm calling to say thank you." I'm like, whoa, wait a second here. I'm the one that had you hosted, so why are you calling to thank me? That's not making any sense. And that's when he broke the news that when I had stopped him, he was on his way to commit suicide.
Ooh. And
I was frozen because in my head, there were so many opportunities I could have left without even talking to him.
Right.
And I was like, wow. So the first thing that came to my mind was, you need to go see a counselor. And he said, well, I've been seeing a counselor for almost 2 years and nothing was happening. And I was just tired and I just wanted to end it.
Mm-hmm.
So I said, what happened? He said, well, there was crazy stories you were sharing with me. I didn't understand most of them. I said, well, that was not my fault. You were rushing me, So then we laughed. But on a serious note, he said he went back home and based on the story I shared with him, he flipped the suicide note he has left for his parents, which nobody have seen it. Mm-hmm. He flipped it and he started writing down all the things he was thankful and happy about. Mm-hmm. And he went from 0 on a scale of 1 to 10 when I met him to about 29 different reasons why he wants to live.
Wow.
So I was so excited. So I said, hey, you know what? You're in a different frame of mind right now. Why don't you go find another counselor? And then he asked if I was a counselor, and I said no. And he thanked me and he hung up. And folks, that very moment changed my life.
Yeah, I can see why.
I went on to start the I Am Happy project,
right,
for the purpose of just getting people together and talking about happiness, because happiness is one of those things we all know is very important in our life, yes, but we kind of compartmentalize it, everybody to their own kind of thing. Right. And I wanted it to become a conversation piece. And so that was kind of what led to where we are, from I Am Happy project to Happy Neighborhood project.
I think that's interesting. The way you said that is to initiate a conversation about it. That's really good. I'm gonna give us just a quick pause here to let the folks who are watching us know that if they have any questions about what we're talking about here, there's a couple of things. One is you're seeing Edwin's website on the screen, but also you can send any queries to info@referencepointtv.com. It'll come directly to me. I'll get it to Edwin, and we'll be able to answer any questions that you might have about this. But let's talk about one of the things that you and I had discussed a little bit, Edwin, in the conversations that we had before the show. And that is, there are, at this stage of the game, there's an organization. There's a sizable group of people, all of whom, or almost all of whom, are volunteers in this initiative, who are bringing the message forward. And there are activities, there are events, there are regular events, there are international events and things like that are going on. Could you give us a little perspective on what's happening in the world of the delivery of the happiness message?
Absolutely, yes. So after the experience with the young man, I was so consumed with the whole happiness stuff. It's like a little kid in the candy store. Mm-hmm. I decided, with a subject this valuable, this important, this critical, there got to be a forum for it. So I checked around, I couldn't find any forum. So I decided to start the Global Happiness Summit.
Okay.
So the very first one happened October 10, 2010. So it was 10, 10, 10. So like the universe was in alignment. And we hosted it in Alameda, California, on board the USS Hornet, for those who are familiar with the area. Uh-huh. And so we brought people that were doing any kind of research about happiness together, and it was fun. And then one of the things that came out of that was, hey, what about a movement, to create a day for International Day of Happiness? And there were other organizations around the world that participated in this. And so we were able to get the United Nations to pass a resolution in 2012. Mm-hmm. So we host the Global Summit the first time 2010. The US passed a resolution 2012, making March 20th International Day of Happiness.
Wow.
And my work was actually recognized at the United Nations in 2014 for what we do for global happiness. So that was a very humbling experience. And then we move on, working with individuals, doing some volunteer work with the focus on spreading happiness.
Right.
Then fast forward to February of 2020, the beginning of the pandemic.
Right.
We've celebrated the International Day of Happiness every year since 2012, okay? But this time was different because all the events were being canceled.
Oh, yeah, right.
And so I called my small team and I said, guys, we are not going to allow this pandemic or whatever it is, because we didn't really know what it was then. We're not going to allow it to stop us from celebrating happiness. And so we started to look for alternate way, and we brought it onto Zoom.
Ah, there you go.
Okay. And so we hosted the first event on March 20th, 2020.
Nice.
And being that a lot of people were stuck at home, when they came to the event, we had only like 65 people attend that event because they were a little bit taken back. Why is this crazy guys trying to celebrate happiness when we are losing our business and people are dying and all those kind of stuff? But those 65 who came and spent 55 minutes with me, they were so excited that when they, at the end of the time, they goes, hey, can we do this again next week? And I said, no, this is supposed to be an annual event, okay? and I said, but since we have nothing to do, let's do it again next week.
Got it.
And then one other person goes, well, it was free now. Is it always going to be free? I say, yes, it's going to always be free. Of course, I opened my big mouth. I had no clue what I was getting myself into. And so by next Friday, the number doubled. And this time we were only doing it once a week. By next Friday, the number doubled. The following Friday, the number doubled again. And fast forward, at the middle of the pandemic, we were getting close to 20,000 registration every single month.
Wow.
And we were getting so much. It's kind of like a safe haven. People come in, spend that 55 minutes with us, and they didn't care about what was happening in the outside world.
Right.
They know that they could collaborate with the people who came. They know they could focus on their own happiness while they were there. It was kind of unwritten command that no talk about pandemic, even though we never said that.
Right.
And so it just grew, and we started to find a way to show businesses how they can realign what they do, how they can reinvent themselves. And people who came depressed to the meeting, They left excited, they left pumped up, And so it was really fascinating, during that period. And so now we still host about 25 events every week.
Every week?
Every week, yes. And I'm so thankful. We have servant leaders who make it happen. Otherwise, it's not just by myself. As a matter of fact, I only host one event a week now, whereas I was hosting a lot of it in the beginning. But I have kind-hearted people who are serious about helping other people that make it happen. As a matter of fact, we have an average of about 4 or 5 co-hosts to each event that make it happen every week. And we have over 100 co-hosts, together.
Nice.
And so we encourage people who are in business to come and experience what it's like, to do business across their street, across their neighborhood. But now we are focusing on people who can do business regionally, nationwide, or globally. Because we have events in so many other countries.
That's fantastic. Edwin, we've only got about 3.5 or so minutes left in this segment of the show. I'm going to ask you a very significant question. For me, it's significant. For the crew here, significant. These shows are 30 minutes long. So if you would be willing to hang out after we do our end credits, and we can start up again and continue this conversation. I'm just hoping you would be willing to give me another 30 minutes of your time this evening. Would you be willing to do that?
I'm here already, so I'm happy to do that.
So let's go and in this last couple of minutes and look at some of the things that you were just talking about in terms of the growth of this. One of the things that's interesting to me about it, and I think very significant, is that happiness should be a contagion. It's contagious. If you're around people that are happy, it sort of rubs off. It's sort of like, it can be a positive catalyst. The opposite is true. I think we've all been in a situation where, you're in a room and people are talking and somebody walks in the room and all of a sudden it's like all the air gets sucked out of the room because that person is like super negative, right? We've all experienced that. But the opposite is true. Happiness can be contagious. And what you're doing, it seems to me, with all of these meetings and getting people connected is creating a viral effect of happiness.
Yes. Yes. So one quick thing, because of time, I will just say this. There's a study that was done by Harvard Medical School and the University of California in San Diego. And they find out that when an individual becomes happy, they trigger a chain reaction. And that chain reaction affects through 3 degrees of their friends. And so there might be some time where you are feeling happy and you don't even know why. It's because somebody else is intensely happy.
Got it.
Okay. And that's one. The other one and this is one area that I'm really focusing on, is you just talk about happiness being contagious and it's 100% so. But the people sometimes, when they get unhappy, they stay away from happy people. And so their situation gets worse.
Right.
You hear a person will say, leave me alone.
Yeah.
Or I can't get out of my bed.
Right.
Or I don't want to go to do the things that I used to enjoy doing. And so they are in this situation where it's going to get worse before it gets better.
Right. So those are the ones we have to bring some happiness to, or at least be present to allow them to go through whatever the challenge is. I mean, we're emotional creatures. It comes, we're going to be angry, we're going to be frustrated, we're going to be in grief, but those are things that pass through us, and you have to give the other person the opportunity to allow that to happen. We have about 30 seconds left. When we come back for the next show, I want to talk about your little pamphlet about the 10 ways to be happy, but we'll get into that on the next thing. So ladies and gentlemen, hope you've been paying attention. This is actually fun stuff to talk about, but beyond fun, it's significant and it's important, and it can create a change in the human condition. So Edwin, thanks for being here. I know you'll be around for a few more minutes, and I appreciate that. But ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you next time on Reference Point.